Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 139. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Sunday, September the 8th, from the James Strong Show studio in western St. Charles County. I almost didn't do a podcast from the studio today. In fact, the studio was option number 3 this morning. Option number 1 was going to be a podcast from the campground. I went camping this weekend, but I opted not to do that because when I'm camping, I'm in a different frame of mind. I'm not in broadcaster mode. I'm in kickback mode, and I just thought, you know what? You don't play when you work. You don't work when you play, and I was playing, so I didn't want to work. Okay. Option number 2, I was going to record the podcast from my deck outside whilst watching it rain. It's raining right now in East Central Missouri as of 10:20 on Sunday morning. I thought it'd be nice to do a podcast from outside, listen to the pitter-patter of the rain, but I thought, you know what? Rain, wet things, and electricity don't always go hand in hand. So I thought that perhaps there could be a potential problem there, either with equipment shorting out or myself being electrocuted. I thought, you know what, maybe that's not the best option. So I brought everything up to the studio and decided to do the podcast from the studio. I'm going to link the greatness of America and the opportunities that we have in this country with my camping trip of this weekend. And you're thinking to yourself, here he goes again. Strong is going to take two things that are totally, I don't want to say diametrically opposed or opposite, but have seemingly nothing in common with one another. And he's going to link them. So I ask that you bear with me because I think I'm going to do a good job of this. And maybe to explain my point of view, my opinion based in fact, while telling a story, okay? But I had planned on going camping this weekend. Really, I hadn't decided. About a week ago, I decided that. I thought, you know what? I've had vacation. I've been camping. This has been a good summer for that type of thing. I've been able to take a breath and do more of the outdoor things, the things that are fun. And I'm glad I did that because I've had some health issues this year. And I thought, you know what? You're not getting any younger. You're obviously not getting any healthier. So have a little bit more fun. This is the 4th camping trip I've made in the area, plus one out in California. I've got another one scheduled in California in October. So even though I don't go on any more camping trips except for the one that's scheduled, that'll be 6 camping trips in 1 year. Not bad at all. But this particular camping trip, this was going to be a leave on Friday and come back Sunday afternoon. But everything was cut a little bit short by the rain that came through, okay? But again, I handled it all just the same way that we need to handle the problems that we have in our everyday life in America. If you're not living in America, we'll say the everyday problems that you have in your everyday life, wherever you may live. Okay. Well, here's how the trip started out for me. Got off of work at 5:00 on Friday evening. By 5:05, I was in the car headed to the campground. Okay. So I left work a little after 5, got to the campground about 5:40. Now, the sun sets a whole lot earlier than it normally does, okay? So I couldn't dilly-dally around. I had to get to camp and meet my number 3 son, who was going to camp with me for the weekend, and get camp set up, cook dinner, do the dishes, and you got to have all this done before it gets dark because it's hard to do this kind of stuff in the dark. I then had 2 phone calls before I could get things set up. And there were both people who I wanted to speak with. So the one phone call lasted a little while longer. Then the mad dog called me, and I had to, I guess, respectfully ask to talk with him later, because if I had a similar conversation with the mad dog, I would not have gotten camp set up, and I would have been cooking and cleaning up in the dark. Didn't want that. So after those 2 phone calls, number 3 son comes, we set up camp. After camp is set up, I begin cooking dinner. And we had a great dinner. Fried potatoes, steak, just a meal fit for a king. Camping meals, I don't know if it always tastes better because of it's usually later than normal when you eat, because it was probably close to 6:30 before we ate, which is a little early for me, or a little late for me, I should say. But just the fact that the weekend has begun and you're outdoors and you're relaxed, maybe food just tastes better that way. But fantastic dinner. We had beer, we had steak, we had fried potatoes. And then we cleaned up the mess. And the campground that I go to, it's Klondike Campground. It's a St. Charles County park. Nice campground, nice clean facilities, and they've got a kitchen where you can clean up the mess. So you take all your dishes to the kitchen, bring your own soap and sponge, and wash everything up, dry it, and bring it back to camp, and you're ready for the next day. So it makes it very, very easy. So after we cleaned up the mess, we sat around, drank beer, and talked. And, of course, my son said, "You remember the radio, didn't you? So we can listen to the ball game tonight?" Well, no, I had forgotten the radio. So no ball game. But that's okay. It wasn't the end of the day. We or end of the world, okay? We were able to still have a nice discussion. It's always good to have discussions with your adult children, especially my adult children. I guess you've done a good job raising your children when you find out that in many ways, if not most ways, they're a lot smarter than you, even though they've been on the earth not nearly as long as you. So it makes you feel good. You can bounce stuff off of them. You can play the point counterpoint. And while you're the parent, they're certainly your equal. So we had nice conversations into the night. And about 10 o'clock, we had visitors. Pardon me. About 10 o'clock, we had visitors into camp. Not people, because there really weren't many people at the campground this weekend for whatever reason, because the weather was beautiful Friday night. But we had skunks that came into the camp. Now, this campground had been notorious for skunks in the past. And I had read an article somewhere where if you take ammonia and put ammonia around the perimeter of your camp, ammonia smells like urine. Skunks don't like that. They think somebody else has marked the territory, and they don't come past the little territory that you've marked with the ammonia. Well, I've tried that the last several times. I guess it worked because I never saw skunks. Well, the skunks didn't care about the ammonia this time. They walked right past it into camp, and they wandered up to. They were 4 feet from us. They didn't care. I guess they were hungry. They were curious, and we didn't know what to do. Do we scare them away and then risk being sprayed? Do we let them do whatever they want and risk being sprayed? Because if you're sprayed by skunks at camp, trip's over. I mean, and not only is the trip over, but how do you get home? Do you take the stinky skunk clothes into your car and drive and then contaminate your car? Do you drive home naked and risk being arrested? I didn't know. But we did what we could. We'd clap our hands and stomp our feet a little bit. And finally they went away. By about 11 o'clock, it was time for bed. So we did that. And Friday night got a bit chilly, down into the 50s. And I thought, well, that's okay. I'll just pull out my sleep shirt. And I'd forgotten my sleep shirt. So basically, I don't want to say I froze, because I didn't. I mean, how can you freeze if it's in the 50s only? It's not below freezing. But I was a bit chilly. I hunkered down into my summertime sleeping bag, which is a lot thinner and a lot easier to carry than the other one. But I didn't say I was cold, but I was a bit chilly. Okay, got up for breakfast the next morning, made coffee, camp coffee on a percolator, absolutely the best. And we had a nice breakfast. We had coffee, and I used Seattle's Best Portside Blend. It's a good coffee. Seattle's Best is a good brand. It's owned by Starbucks now, but they still make fantastic coffee. And that Portside Blend is about my favorite of the pre-ground coffees that you can buy at the store. But we had bacon, we had eggs, we had toast, we had yogurt, we had, what else? Bananas. granola bars, and of course, pots of coffee. Fantastic breakfast. There was one problem, though. I had forgotten the lighter I normally bring to light the propane stove. But that's okay because I always have a plan B. I have matches, okay? Well, what happens in the late summer when it gets down into the 50s? That's right, a heavy dew. So the matches were damp from the humidity, damp from the dew. We finally got the fire lit. One match created one spark. I got my hand close enough to the gas, and it made a big pop, singed a little bit of the hair off of my hands, but we got the fire started and never turned the fire off. In other words, we went from brewing the coffee to leaving the fire on low and keeping the coffee away from the flame, but still close enough to keep it warm. Then we put on the frying pan with the bacon and the eggs, later for the toast, and the fire never went off because we were afraid that if we turned the fire off, we'd never get it back on. So again, there's always a plan B, and the plan B worked. So bacon, eggs, coffee, toast, granola bars, bananas, a fantastic breakfast. Again, cleaned up the mess, took it to the kitchen, scrubbed everything up, and then cleaned up camp. By this time, it's mid-morning, and number 3 son had to leave. He couldn't stay but the one night. He had work around the house to do. Him and his wife are recent homeowners, and with owning a home comes responsibility and yard work, etc. And he had a lot of that to do. So he had to leave, which was fine because then I was alone and I went fishing. Fishing at the lake this time, not so good. 3.5 hours fishing. Was it 3.5 hours? Yeah, about 3.5 hours fishing. I caught a whole 3 fish. 3 fish in 3.5 hours. Not the best. But there were a lot of people at the park that day. Not so many people camping, but a lot of people who were there for the day. It was just beautiful weather. Low humidity. 80 degrees. Sunny. A nice breeze. Just one of the 20 pick days we get in the Midwest. About 20 days a year, we have perfect weather here in the Midwest. This was one of them. And a lot of people were out there fishing. Now, it just wasn't fishermen that were fishing. It was primarily families with kids fishing. In other words, lots of noise, lots of splashing, lots of everything. And I don't know if that hurt the fishing or not, or if the fishing just wasn't good. I don't know. But here were a lot of people trying to fish. I don't know how much luck they were having, but I wasn't having much luck. But you know what? That was fine. After the fishing, came back, had lunch, sandwich, chips, and another granola bar, cleaned up the mess again, and took a nice long hike. Took a nice long hike through the park, came back, my legs were tired, time for a nap. So I took a little bit of a nap, woke up, and looked at the clock, and it was about time for the trophy wife to come. Now, my trophy wife, she doesn't camp with me. She doesn't like camping, but she will come for dinner sometimes. And she did show up. Now, what I asked her, I said, look, when you come for dinner, I said, first of all, bring whatever you like, and I'll cook it. And please, because I was forgetful, can you bring my sleep shirt? Can you bring a lighter to light the stove? And can you bring the radio so we can listen to the ball game? And she did. So we had a nice dinner, nice talk, went for a little bit of a hike. Then she went home. I cleaned up the mess, and I went fishing again. Not much more luck. Fished for about 45 minutes, caught 1 fish. But again, beautiful day, a nice hike. You always like to catch fish, but if you don't catch that many on a beautiful day, that's okay. I listened to the ball game. Listened to the Cardinals beat the Pirates. I think the final was 10-1. The Cubs lost. Cardinals' magic number is, I think, 17, according to Ross Malone. And life was good. Took a shower. Went to bed. Yeah, there's nice shower facilities at Klondike, too. And I've got to have a shower before I go to bed, especially when camping in the Midwest. Because for those of you who camp in the Midwest, it's not like camping on the West Coast because we have mosquitoes here. So you've got to spray yourself down big time with insect repellent with lots of DEET in it. If you spray yourself down with a DEET-based insect repellent, you're not going to get bit. But that's because DEET is